Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Tout le monde m'entend.
Ouais, je pense que ça marche.
De Grâce, on va sortir.
Ben, on m'entend.
On est bien.
Ouais.
Ok, ça marche. Ok, Grâce, on va sortir le. Bah, je vais muter là derrière. Alors,
Pardon.
prends votre main.
Ouais. Oula. Ouais. Ouais. Allumé. Allumé. Vous m'entendez? Non. Test. Test. D'accord.
Je vais le resserrer.
Ah, un, deux. Là, tu m'entends? Ah, ah.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening. Thank you for being here with us today at the Climate Academy. My name is Charlotte Crozet, and I'm in charge of a foundation. And I'm delighted to be here with you to introduce this evening on adaptation. Adaptation is a complex and vast topic. It's a theme we selected some 3 years ago. 3 years during which a lot has changed. And things are not sufficient. We have to go beyond small things and the plans that are mooted by private companies. And tonight, we want to make sure that the topic is better understood by all players and that we can mobilize around that. We'll look at what scientists found, as well as NGOs, and what we can do or what we do with the Egis Foundation. Tonight, or this evening rather, we'll give the floor to Juliette Nouel to introduce the assembly, and she will popularize this whole issue of adaptation, climate adaptation, or adaptation to climate change. And then we'll have a theme roundtable, thematic roundtable on our food system. Last year it was on water, and this year it's on food. How, with a changing climate, we want to be more resilient and have a food system that is more resilient. How can we adapt? How can all the players or actors in the system can adapt? And we'll have a number of organizations that are committed to this particular theme that will be involved. Then we'll have another roundtable to explain a number of projects that our foundation is supporting, in particular the Team Up for Climate, looking at climate change adaptation with a number of applications. And we'll talk about Photoclimat, Photoclimat, a partner for tonight, and a project that we've been supporting for the last 2 years that shows a different light on adaptation and the solutions that young people find to make the topic more popular. And I will now give the floor to Juliette and give you a very good evening. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Martine Royon, for this invitation. And to start this particular session on adaptation to climate change, in particular the adaptation of agriculture, I will explain. I will talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for questions and answers, if I stick to the time allocated to me. This is called Déclic Adaptation, with a brief introduction, because I think you're all aware of climate change. What is the current situation? Plus 1.3 degrees Celsius. It's not 1.2, but it's 1.3 now. And for France, it's 1.9, and that is in comparison to the start of industrial development or the industrial era. And you can see there's a huge increase since the early 2000s. And you have some continents, or continents are warming up more rapidly than the oceans. And when we try to project the increase in temperatures, we realize that when the world will have reached 1.5 degrees Celsius in increase, it will be +2 in France. Plus 1.3 today, you could say only that. But in fact, we've always moved in unknown territory. The scientists produced the report on the state of climate in 2024, and the scientists say this is an irreversible catastrophe and a real emergency. It's not fun to tell you that, but we have to start with that and then move to the next stage. How can we reduce the climate risk? And in order to do that, we have to check words. Reducing climate risk can be done in two ways, but I'd like to ask you a question. If your bathroom is flooded, what is your immediate reaction? Well, you try to close the tap, but in fact, the tap is broken and you can't really stop the water from running. So the flood is getting worse and worse. The flooding is getting worse. What do you do next? Then you recuperate the water, so you scoop it out. You can also raise the object. But if you try to move, well, closing the tap is called mitigation, whilst the other measures are what is called adaptation. So you have two ways of reducing climate risks. Either you mitigate the risk or you adapt to the risk. Now, to your mind, what is this? Is this mitigation or adaptation? It's mitigation, of course, because we try to decarbonate electricity. And this, building a dam, it's adaptation against flooding and the rise in sea level. And putting green in the cities is both. I don't know what's happening with the slides, but in order to reduce the climate risk, we need both. Mitigation and adaptation, they're both indispensable. And going further is, I could say that mitigation reduces the causes, whilst adaptation reduces the consequences. They don't have the same scale or time scale nor a scope. Mitigation will only work if all countries do it together and at best in 20 years from now. And that is if we are optimistic, if we manage to reach carbon neutrality tomorrow. Whilst adaptation can be local and have a quick impact. So not the same purpose, not the same scope, not the same timeline. Do you know this graph from the IPCC? It shows change in temperatures, and up to today, we're still in the orange zone. And next, well, it depends on how much we will produce emissions. To your mind, what scenario are we in now? We're in the intermediate scenario, but that is if states comply with their commitments. So we tend to be the upper intermediary. So we have to adapt to reduce the consequences because they are inevitable, but of course we have to mitigate going into the worst case scenario. So an adaptation is really getting prepared for stronger and stronger consequences. First conclusion of this introduction: never wonder if you need to mitigate or adapt. You have to do both at the same time. Now, what are the consequences that we've already seen? We can't see anything any longer. Somebody's in front of the camera.
Alors, l'alarme sonne maintenant quasiment.
The alarm is ringing virtually every day in all countries in the world on all risks or hazards. We see breaking news that are striking.
Plus la présentation.
The slideshow has gone from the screen, says the speaker. Thank you very much.
Alors, je disais, c'est mondial.
So it's a global phenomenon up to today, and today we have flooding in Nepal, Mexico, a hurricane in the States. We have the Kirk tempest over France at the moment, Milton hurricane. In fact, there aren't more hurricanes, they're just bigger and worse. And France has a new report out now showing that all regions have been impacted by climate change. And climate change has different consequences on different regions because they are different. So the variety of landscapes and conditions shows that France is like a sort of compendium of all possible situations. But let me show you the impact on human resources. For example, farmers work outdoors. In 2003, 6 people died whilst harvesting grape or picking grape. And we could wonder if in France the law will not allow people to go on technical unemployment. In other words, stop work when it's too hot. Of course, we won't look at the details of all impacts on farm raising, on cattle raising, for example. You can see the consequences of drought or flooding, which is the current situation. But the animals suffer from too much heat or the lack of water and so forth. In 2021, we had a period of frost after a warm winter. It was a disaster for fruit trees. That was 2021. In 2022, you will remember, we had serious drought. 44 départements had a particular status of agricultural catastrophe. In 2023, we had the heat wave, and 2024, we have extreme rainfalls. And that is just for France, but it's the same in other countries. You can extrapolate. You have extreme rainfalls, for example, that kills the roots, multiplies the diseases, and is a problem. We know that the 2024 harvest will be down in France because of the rain. Oranges have been impacted by drought. Olive oil has seen its price raised by 2. Chocolate, everything, sugar, things that are part of the food system are bearing the consequences of climate change and becoming more difficult to produce. For farmers, it's an absolute disaster. And fortunately, we have public powers, public authorities that can help them. But in 2022, this is an I4CE survey showing you what is in yellow and blue on the graph, which shows the impact of diseases and pests. And you see that the public authorities had to spend €1 billion to support farmers because of the impact of climate change. But what will be the impact in the future? Well, for France, we said France forecasts plus 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. It means that summers will be much warmer, and this is a rather optimistic option. So what does it mean if France has plus 4 degrees Celsius? It means a lot of warm weather, hot weather, with an increase in drought, fires, glaciers that will completely melt, and the sea level will rise, of course, for centuries, or perhaps for thousands of years even. And this is what we have to get ready for. Even if greenhouse gases emissions stopped tomorrow, we would still have a rise in the sea level that we'll have to take into account. So whatever happens, we'll have to adapt, including to a rise in the sea level or ocean level. What is in light blue is the Dunkirk region, and what will be impacted by the rise in sea level. And this is Camargue in the south of France. It already has a number of problems and cannot grow rice any longer because of salted water. So this plus 4 degree will be a real problem. But what about the rest of the world? Everything is worse than at the time of the previous IPCC report. In purple, what you see is when it will be impossible for men to live in these areas because of the heat. It's the number of days per year where it will be impossible for people to live in there. So you see that 1/3 of the planet will become impossible to live in. By way of conclusion, I must say that adapting is getting ready. So what about how do we adapt? Well, today we're just at the very beginning of this trend. We're still burying our head in the sand because there are a number of stereotypes. People say, no, we shouldn't adapt, we should reduce our emissions. Other people think we still have time. Others that, we always found a solution. And others, again, think that technology will save us. Well, technologies will be useful in farming, but they will not suffice. Although adapting brings a lot of benefits. For example, this is the IPCC scale. The most recent report called Adaptation Gap Report. It says that if we adapt properly, we'll reduce about half of the risk, or we'll avoid that. So let me give you some examples of adaptation strategies. For example, you can have anti-flooding barriers. I must say that I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just telling you what is possible. We can build dams, for example, along the seaside or rivers. We could have specific areas that will be flooded by floods. We can also plant a lot of plants against erosion. Do you know this building? It's called Signal. It's on the Atlantic coast, and it was 100 yards away from the sea when it was built, but it's by the sea now. We also have to adapt to the heat if you work outdoors, and you could do it by changing your working hours. You can increase the number and duration of breaks, and of course, you can also stop work for technical reasons. For farming, it also needs farmers need to adapt to heat, drought, and extreme rainfalls. This will be explained during the round table. They can provide a permanent soil cover, plants that are more resistant to heat and drought, have more hedges that are good for biodiversity, produce shade, and stop the erosion by the rain. But let me give you now some examples of what local authorities can do. Not necessarily for farming, but this is a camping site that is well known in Normandy. It was moved recently because it was constantly flooded. In the mountains, we also have to adapt. Very often, ski resorts have to close down or be used over the summer. This is an example that was awarded a prize. 60,000 trees were planted to prevent soil erosion. And we have a number of things for biodiversity and against river flooding. And for urban areas, we have to plant more trees and plants. By way of conclusion, it is urgent to start, and a picture is better than words. The faster we do it, the better we'll do it. But I should stress that what adaptation will cost will be less than if we don't adapt, because adapting is cheaper than repairing or doing something afterwards. This brings me to the end of my presentation, and I want to give you the floor if you have any questions.
So we have a database at ZADAC. We have a great database that was set up with a colleague, and it lists every day articles and evidence about climate change in one industry or another. Could we say that we have new examples every day? What is the order of magnitude as well? Well, the climate change adaptation workshops was set up about 2 years ago, a bit less. And in the beginning, when I was working on foresight, because I'm a journalist by trade, so I've always been interested in the news. You can't forget about that. So I struggled to find in newspapers the impact of climate change, or articles about that, and articles that were talking about the specific impact of climate change. The media struggle to understand now. They still have a long way to go, but it's still getting better. And now we are receiving a whole slew of articles. It's difficult to list all of the articles about the impact of climate change. So yes, there's been a huge change. It is due to two things. Number one, climate change is intensifying. And the second reason is that the media finally has decided to start talking about it, and they say, okay, this is due to climate change which is caused by human activity. So thank you for this question. You gave us a few examples about what local authorities could do. What can companies do? Well, is this the right place to talk about that? Yes, it is. Right. We roll out these workshops in local authorities, cities, towns, etc., as in companies. I'm not going to give you names, but we work with companies from all industries. The banking industry that is starting to think about how to integrate climate change in the scoring when they see companies that they are going to finance. Well, they want to look at whether or not these companies are exposed to the risk of climate change. So the banking sector, but we also work with the tourism industry, the farming industry, insurances as well. I do not have any examples in mind, but clearly we work with all sorts of industries. And since you're asking this question, I would like to say that the MEDEF that represents CEOs in France is interested in that. They recently published a guidebook to explain how companies could adapt to climate change. So in this guidebook, we are mentioned as a workshop raising awareness on this issue, and the MEDEF is saying that the first message is that companies need to start as soon as possible because financially it is in your best interest to get prepared. Besides, it is really going to smooth your investments over time instead of having to invest all of a sudden to repair the damage first, and second to prepare when the house is on fire. All of this costs much more. For companies and for local authorities, there are new service development opportunities. They can also find new markets. And another question. Thank you. Could you please describe what France would look like with +4 degrees? It's hard to imagine. Well, I can go back in my presentation. There were a few slides covering that topic. I'm going to use Christophe Cassou's conclusion to answer. Christophe Cassou is a climatologist, a French climate expert. He is the main or one of the main contributors to the latest IPCC report. And this is what he says. France with +4 degrees cannot be imagined. You can't imagine it based on today's benchmark. You just can't imagine what it would look like. And you can't think about small disruptions. This would be a complete overhaul. So +4 degrees The previous government in France, and Christophe Béchu, who was the minister in charge of the environmental transition, said, we are going to work on a +4 degree by 2100 to work on our policies and, well, so it's good to have a sort of reference point to do that. So it was decided to choose the scenario of +4 degrees by 2100. Christophe Cassou says it's hard to imagine, it can't be imagined, and it is quite likely that we are going to reach +4% before 2100. Besides, it is an average over the whole year. In the summer, it's going to be +5, +6, +7 degrees, you know, during heat waves. Which is why, one, we need to prepare ourselves, and two, at the international level, we need to reduce our emissions in order to avoid that scenario. What is included in this report that talks about +4 degrees? Are we talking about moving some infrastructures? Well, there are no +4 degree reports. What we are waiting for, what we've been waiting for a few months, and it's been delayed because of the political upheavals in France, what we're expecting is the PNAC 3, the National Plan of Adaptation to Climate Change. France already published 2 of those, and the third one was supposed to come out before the summer. This plan gives some guidelines, for lack of a better word, guidelines from the government, and they also tried to embed this +4 degree scenario into law. We need to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 in France by law, so we hope that there will be a regulatory aspect. But I cannot tell you what the report covers or includes because it hasn't been out yet, and I do not know when it's going to come out. Hopefully soon. One last question. The lady over there. You rightly said that we should mitigate and adapt at the same time. Companies have a lot of obligations in terms of carbon neutrality. So their budgets have been earmarked for that, and they can't be extended necessarily. And we can see that some companies want to shift towards adaptation now instead of mitigation, especially in real estate. They think that an asset that is no longer going to be covered by insurances because it will be in a fire-prone area or flood-prone area, it will not be able to be sold, it will lose all its value, it will be the collapse of that. And so what is your question? How can we make sure that companies also focus on adaptation? No, on the contrary. I believe that it's important to do both. People have been focusing on mitigation, and some companies are starting to focus on adaptation. Well, you might have heard about the CSRD European directive. It doesn't answer your question? The CSRD covers both. Well, we'll talk about that afterwards.
Merci.
Thank you. One question about your presentation. You said that you work a lot with local authorities, companies in different industries. What about our politicians? What about decision makers? You talked about the previous minister. Do you work with the political makers and policy makers? Well, we are now referenced as a training provider at the Ministry of Ecological Transition. So there are a lot of minister employees who attend our workshops, and we hope that this is going to bear fruit, and we hope that we will gain a foothold in other ministries, because obviously adaptation mustn't only be a focus of the Environment Ministry. The Ministry of Finance needs to be interested in that too.
On va clôturer
Thank
cette
you very
séance.
much.
Merci beaucoup,
We're going to
Juliette.
close this session. Thank you, Juliette.
Ce n'était qu'une introduction.
This was
puisqu'on là, on
just
passe à la
an
table
introduction.
ronde.
We're going to move on to the round
On
table.
va accueillir Irène
Let's
Colonna
welcome
pour
Irène
l'animation
Colonna,
de
who will
table
be
ronde.
our moderator.
Bravo.
A round of applause. Thank you.
Il faudra à chaque fois allumer le
So
micro
do not forget to turn the
sur le
mic
trait.
on each time you take
Ça marche?
it. Can you hear me? Yes, you really can.
Bah, vous pouvez venir directement,
Well,
je pense.
please
hein.
join me on
Il y a pas
stage.
de-
Join
pas de
me
surprise, je
around
serai
the
pas seule
table.
sur
No
scène ce soir.
surprises. I'm not going to be on my own tonight.
Du coup, j'ai le plaisir
Right,
de
I have
vous
the
présenter ce
pleasure
soir donc,
of
sur le thème
introducing
climat,
this round
alimentation
table
et
focusing on
citoyenneté.
climate, food and
Agnès
citizenship. We have
Ouais, c'est bon.
Agnès
Delefortrie, donc, tu
Delefortrie.
es membre
You
bénévole du
are
conseil
a member
d'administration
of
des Greniers
the
d'Abondance,
board for
qui est une
les
association
Greniers
qui a
d'Abondance,
pour
an
objectif de
organization
démocratiser la
that
connaissance,
wants to raise
sur les
awareness
enjeux de
on
transition alimentaire,
the food
les
transition
enjeux et les menaces qui pèsent
and
du coup
the
sur le
threats
système et
against
développer en
our
particulier
food
des
system.
outils de
And you
sensibilisation
develop
et des ateliers.
awareness-raising tools and workshops.
On a aussi Gwenn
We
Pulliat,
also have Gwenn Pulliat, who is a researcher at the French National Center for Scientific Research, the CNRS. You talk about access to food, food resilience, vulnerability, access to food, implementation of climate change adaptation policies, and you talk about the peri-urban areas and how to use them. And we also have Luca, who is 17. He's a member of the Young Ambassador program for food resilience. This is a program that we set up this year thanks to the Egis Foundation support with Make-Sense for Climate and Unicité. So you will tell us more about your experience in a few moments. And we also have Antoine Zybura, who is a designer of systems and services, and you mostly work on ecology projects, and he's also a member of Académie du Climat, and he was part of the team that worked with the great civic service team. You have some, 4 proud members who are attending today. They braved the storm. No, it's not raining anymore, but thank you for being here anyway. And my name is Irène, and I work with Make Sense, and we develop the Fair Transition Program. We realize that people coming from working areas are in the front line. Clearly, they will be the first victims of climate change. They are less responsible for these terrible consequences because their carbon footprint is lower, and yet they are underrepresented in the movement or in the energy transition, or ecological transition rather. I'm going to sit down. There's no reason for me to be the only one standing up. All right, before I give the floor to our various speakers, 4 speakers, what I suggest is to have a little game to make sure that you listen to the presentation, and it's going to help you gain knowledge, and it's going to help you draw the link between food, climate, and citizenship. So you can use your body to answer the question that I'm going to ask. So you can lean that way or that way, depending on the question or depending on your answer. The first question is the following. It has to do with health and food. In your opinion, if you regularly or daily eat beef, pork, or lamb, so the most polluting types of meat, by how many percent does a human being increase their risk of having cardiovascular diseases or cancer? If you think it's 12%, go that way. If you think it's 20%, lean that way on your left. A lot of people are thinking 20%? Well, it's 12%, but it goes up to 20% if you eat a lot of processed meat, charcuterie, sausages, etc. What is the proportion of French people who say that they do not eat enough? 16% or 24%? Oh, half and half. I have more 24% apparently. Well, the national average is 16%. Twice as much as in 2016. So there's been an increase in hunger in France, and 24% is among people who are under 40 years old. So it is a problem that impacts the youth more than older people. Another question, Juliette touched upon the price increase. I'm going to ask you to change the way you vote. Okay, second round, we're changing the rules. Please, if you think that, well, the question is this first. What is the product that saw its price increase the most between 2020 and 2023? If you think that it is rice, do this, a little round, a circle with your hands. If you think it's rice, do a circle. If you think it's olive oil, a medium round like this. And if you think it's orange juice, big orange. Do this. Okay, so rice, small circle, olive oil, medium circle, big circle for orange juice, or for oranges. Okay, I see some oranges, I see some olive over there, some rice here.
Ok, j'ai l'impression qu'on a... Je saurais pas dire... Bon,
hard to say. Hard to say.
C'est un petit peu rouillé, désolé, mais du coup je vous donne les réponses.
Let me give you the answer. Rice went up 28%. The price of rice increased by 28% because of climate impacts that reduce the global production, monsoon in Asia and drought in Europe.
Le jus d'orange de 36%.
Orange juice increased by 36% because of hurricanes. You know, there are a lot of hurricanes in Florida and a lot of oranges in Florida, and because of drought as well. And olive oil saw its price increase by 59% because of a wave of frost and defrost in France. Oh, another good news. Other piece of good news. Now, regarding food poverty,
l'approvisionnement, d'après vous, en Seine-Saint-Denis, là d'où viennent...
Now, in the Paris region, where people, or the young people who are here tonight are coming from, what is the proportion of artificial land?
D'après vous, c'est plutôt...
Do you think that it is
on va faire un troisième mode de
a
scrutin.
third way to answer? 0%, you touch the floor with your hands. 100%, you stand up, and if you think that it's in the middle, well, you just stay seated.
Voilà, d'après vous.
So what is the proportion of the land that has been urbanized?
Il y a quelques personnes qui se lèvent un petit peu. Je pense que ça vaut le coup de décoller un petit peu les fesses.
Yes, I think it's worth standing up.
Mais du coup, ouais, on est à 90%
Yes,
de
90% of artificial land.
La surface agricole
And
du
the
département,
farming
c'est 2,4%
area
de la surface
is
totale.
2.4% of the total area. And then with your fingers, you know, and so with your fingers,
D'autonomie alimentaire de l'Île-de-France.
in the Paris region, what is the, from 1 to 5, what is the rate of food autonomy?
On est à 2%, ouais.
2%.
Voilà. Du coup, je vais vous laisser
2% of food autonomy. So
des éléments de problématisation si vous le
I
souhaitez.
will let you say, well, talk more about that. Let's start by giving the floor to Luca and to Antoine.
Pour nous expliquer pourquoi,
They are going to explain why
l'adaptation seule, ça va être
adaptation alone is going to be challenging. Adaptation in terms of behavior is good. At our level, we can have an impact, but we believe that we need a system-based solution. So, Lucas, you have the floor.
Vous m'entendez? Ah oui, c'est bon, on m'entend. Alors moi, on m'a demandé de venir.
I was asked to come here to talk about food in the 93 in the north of Paris. So with my family, we spend 300 euros on groceries for the month. It's not enough because there are 5 of us and it's very expensive. Besides, we can't eat proper food in the north of Paris because we do not have any organic shops, no local produce. So at the end of the month, I have to call my best friend at 1 a.m. to ask him for food. Without him, without his money or financial support, I would have to just fast. Last year, with people from the civic service and with Irene, we did a test, we tried to calculate our carbon footprint. Mine was 5.2 tons per year. And the other young people were way below the average. Before I started civic service, I knew nothing about ecology. I didn't even know what a carbon footprint was. I knew really nothing. My footprint was 5.2 tons. Fine, I did not really understand what it actually meant. So the problem that we have is that we are being told to lower our carbon footprint again and again and again, but it can't be done. You can't reduce, or you can't let go of what you don't have. So it's hard to reduce yet again our carbon footprint. What else could I say? Maybe Antoine can say a few words as well. Well, Luca has already said a lot, and the situation is quite clear. Especially in high priority areas, the objective is not to consume less, but to have access to food, full stop. And obviously we want people to have access to quality food, which is why we talk a lot about a system solution in our project. If you look at the food system, the current food system, I do not know if we're talking about monocrop, the fact that arable land is larger and larger, farmlands are larger and larger, and there are fewer and fewer farmers. They use technologies. We know all of that, but we know that all of this is not sustainable. And therefore, we need to have a different approach. Let me give you an example. I was trained in object design. Let's take a chair. Traditional object. A chair will have a lower positive impact if it is eco-designed, if it is spotless in terms of manufacturing process and material. It is useless if it is used at the Total headquarters. You know, a plastic chair will have a better impact if it is used to, offer food to a climate refugee.
C'est là où la systémique est, la question de cette question-là est ultra fondamentale.
So this is a key issue in this type of project because we try to have a global approach. We try to analyze what's going poorly nowadays, and we try to see how we can be resilient.
Et ça, du coup, ça se fait.
This is what we did this year with the young people. There were two steps. The first step was about sharing. What I mean by that is that we talk about food with young people, and at the same time we try to draw bridges between food and their daily lives, which is why we talked about economic considerations, with this resonates with what Lucas said, and health, because we know that in the Seine-Saint-Denis there are more people who die from cancer and other types of diseases because, namely, of pollution, and also because of the fact that they do not necessarily have access to high-quality food. They tend to eat highly processed food. Once we've started this dialogue with young people, once the young people understand the link with that and their daily lives, they very quickly want to take action. And by talking, we then built a mobile kitchen. So it was a project that lasted several months. It was quite a journey, but we were successful. And the objective of that kitchen was to organize workshops with the local people. We cooked with them. We shared recipes that were, healthier, that used more vegetables. And we also tried to leverage cultural references that resonated with the people. There were a lot of recipes, for example, that resonated with them. This is a way to bring people together, to talk about this topic, so that ultimately we can, organize more relevant, we can think about the longer term. Well, we will talk about this nomadic kitchen soon. So there was the economic consideration and the health consideration as well. we touched upon that earlier. There are young people who told us that some people suffer from diabetes in their families, people had food-related diseases or illnesses. This is something that happens more often among working class people, and this is a double whammy because, they struggle to have access to healthcare as well, on top of having poor health. So we are working on adaptation because we believe that is a good way to include the first victims of these consequences, but we also believe that in terms of mitigation, mitigation would not be relevant for those people. But we need to have a global and complex approach. If you want to add anything, what you're talking about was the object of many theories. There are food environments. When you live in the Seine-Saint-Denis, you have access to low-quality food. Whereas if you live in the center of Paris, you'll have access to Biocoop, organic food shops. So when we talk about changes, well, the change needs to be system-wide. If you ask people to change, but they do not have access to better food, or if the food is not affordable, people cannot adapt. Let's use the example of the Seine-Saint-Denis. It is a department that is trying Vitalim, a new experiment. It's a sort of food social security. The idea is to give people who are selected based on a list of criteria, we give people some money, 50 euros in the Saint-Denis, 50 euros to make an experiment and to encourage good consumer practices, to try and encourage better behaviors. Regarding Vitalim, the Vitalim program, the young people with the nomadic kitchen are organizing workshops with the local people as well, because on top of this financial support, whatever you call it, this allowance, financial support. On top of the financial support, there is a whole support to help people change behaviors, and young people are organizing various activities. Yes, and it's good to contribute to the change of behaviors. For Vitalim, people receive 50 euros, but if they buy food from sustainable, quote-unquote, shops, they can get 20 euros more if they buy food from sustainable shops. I talked to people who were doing that this morning. They say that those are 6-month experiments. People who live in Montreuil can easily find sustainable or organic shops, but there are other areas in the Paris region where it's difficult to find an organic shop. So we see the necessary system change because we're talking about food from the consumer side, but the food system is a global system. It takes into account the production, so farmers in France, Europe and the rest of the world, because we have a global system. You have farmers who buy seeds, fertilizers, etc., tractors, equipment, and they produce food. Once the food is produced, it is processed. There are different steps in the processing phase, and then the food ends up in a logistical center, in a supermarket, and then in the consumer's home. So we are really talking about a food system because we want to focus on the system aspect. You can't tell consumers, it's your fault, you're to blame, you need to change. That's not going to change. But it's good to tell farmers, it's easy to tell the farmers you should change, but the farmers it's complicated for them as well because they have loans, there are financial considerations, etc. Which is why it's important to have a system approach. It's really important to focus on the system aspect if we really want the whole situation to change.
Let me take up the issue of food social security. In the same spirit of what you said, is to have a sort of common food cash system bringing together precarious consumers. It's means tested, of course, and you have more wealthy consumers, and they all contribute based on their own resources, and they get a sort of grant which can be used in specific shops, local shops, which of course brings the issue of the food offer, but it brings people to a system in which they can use this specific voucher of sorts, and of course that encourages farmers to take up the challenges at local level. I can't remember about the offer, but basically a lot of the food on offer is produced within a radius of about 50 kilometers, so it's an area of about 50 kilometers around the shop. But the voucher you get cannot be used in the standard traditional supermarket, because we're not supporting these particular chains of shops, but we're trying to strengthen the links or the relationships between urban consumers and local farmers. And in fact, it's offering an outlet to local farmers.
Effectivement, quand on se dit, quand on a vu d'ailleurs au début de l'année les
At the start of the year,
quand on
there
se dit,
were
en fait,
demonstrations by
si les
farmers
consommateurs
who
n'arrivent pas à se nourrir et à mettre suffisamment de nourriture dans l'assiette et que c'est la même chose au bout de la chaîne, où va la valeur en fait,
wondered about the value added in the food chain, because if consumers can't afford food, then what is it at the other end of the spectrum? I think that it's also a question of information and knowledge. And in Bobigny, for example, my mother wouldn't know where to go to find that sort of food, because there's no information around. So it's a different problem. In our department, we don't have any information about what can be done. There was a shop in our neighborhood. There was a shop owner for organic food. He had 5 shops in the Île-de-France region, the Paris region. But then one of the employees said,
et ça pose aussi plein de questions. Il nous a dit, mais moi en fait, je passais devant tous les jours, mais je pensais que c'était un magasin de bricolage. Donc en fait,
so it was an organic food shop, and a lady said, I walk past this shop every day, but I thought it was a do-it-yourself shop, not organic food. So there was a problem of identification of food as opposed to other things. Let me take up that point. In the organizations, grassroots organizations that help with food around Montpellier, a town in the southwest of France, they try to help disadvantaged neighborhoods and people. They try to get people people to shops other than supermarkets. And they tried to bring people to buying organic food. But a lot of people thought that organic food was just too expensive for their means. But the whole point is really to have wealthy consumers to help not so wealthy consumers with the pooling of purchases, for example, or other things, other actions which involves consumers, so that people think that organic food is too expensive for them, or buying food in bulk is not something they should do, or things like that. So there is a whole issue of talking to people, helping them, educating them to do that, and to buy direct from producers. I see that time is running, and I'll move to the second part about solutions, because we see how difficult it is to bring all actors together to this transition that will bring about mitigation and adaptation actions. But the whole issue is, how do we involve citizens in that? And how do we experiment the food social security idea? How can we involve more citizens? Now, I want to talk about changing behaviors. When we talk about the ideal food system, it means that we have to change farming practices. They have to be better for the environment, these practices. Soils should be covered. We should reintroduce lentils and peas, and we have to have more complex productions and more complexity in the farming systems, and use fewer fertilizers, because nitrogen, for example, is a highly polluting component. So we want systems that are better for the environment, that are nearly organic, with hedges and things like that, that will protect biodiversity, because we want to reintroduce biodiversity. And to introduce such environmental changes in our systems, we will use fields that will provide fewer quantities, or that will have less yield, but they are better systems from a farming point of view. However, in order to implement them, it means that consumers should reduce their meat consumption by about 50%, because animal farming consumes a lot of soybeans, of wheat, and so forth. And it would be better for us to eat cereals and grains rather than eating chicken that will have eaten the wheat that we could have eaten ourselves. But if we want to have environmentally friendly systems, we have to change our consumption behavior or modes of consumption. We have to reduce how much meat and milk or milk products we use. It is vital for the changes to take place in our farming production. We have to have more plant proteins, like peas and lentils, because on top of that, they fix nitrogen in the air, and they're better for the soils and for the next crops. that's where we have to look at both the individual and the system, because we need to change the whole food system at individual and global level. And it's both an individual and a collective change in behavior. It means that catering and restaurants have to change. For example, the town of Paris has a new plan with 2 vegetarian meals a week that are recommended. And it says that for our own health, we eat too much meat. It's not good for health reasons. So we would, it's a win-win situation if we could change that. For citizens, it's a sort of political commitment, but it's also a health commitment and a food commitment, and that would become a change in the whole system. And that's how we will succeed. Thank you. So eat less meat is not just a gesture, but something more fundamental with the question of who is really paying the price for that. In France, 80% of agricultural farming area is dedicated to cattle raising. And we could use these fields to other purposes. Of course, you want in the mountains to maintain the landscapes and help with cattle grazing. But there are a number of areas where it's just stupid to use land to feed animals, like produce maize or corn for chicken. And it is a real environmental challenge that goes well beyond the simple production of chicken. And it means that we should change our behavior. But what do farmers think? Because farmers are represented by a number of associations or organizations other than the FNSEA, which is a farmers' organization that is rather right-wing. The FNSEA is very powerful. And when we talked about farmers demonstrating last year, we talked about the FNSEA. It's the majority trade union for farmers, and it has a major impact on farming policies in France. But the FNSEA has a productivist approach and doesn't really care for the environment. The environment is not a priority for this particular trade union, although in its membership it has a variety of farmers, large companies or large farms that are doing well, especially with European funds, but others that are much smaller and have difficulties making ends meet. And we need an agriculture that is more environmentally friendly, that cares for the quality of the soils, fixation of nitrogen and so forth. So farming should be adapted with better support and compensation for climate change.
l'agriculture est un élément de la solution.
Agriculture is part of the solution of our need to adapt to climate change. But it is very vulnerable to drought, heat, flooding, and so forth. So at some point you have to help farmers and compensate them for their losses. And these are political choices, political issues.
Choix politique.
Well, maybe if we talk about policies,
nous, on a une petite histoire peut-être à vous raconter de
we have
ce qu'on a fait là et comment est-ce que les
story to
personnes
tell you about what we've done
associées aux décisions
and how to involve people in the decision-making process. And sometimes we put people at the core of our decision-making process. For example, this year, we built a nomadic or kitchen, an itinerant kitchen, and we'll tell you what happened when we inaugurated that particular kitchen.
Alors du coup, la semaine dernière, en fait, on a eu l'opportunité de partir au Conseil de l'Europe.
We went to the Council of Europe in Strasbourg with some young people who were with us all year round
Le contexte de base, c'était de venir présenter notre cuisine mobile
to try to show our
tout au long de l'année.
itinerant kitchen.
Et quand on s'est un peu renseigné avant de partir
But before we
ce qui allait
left,
se passer ce jour-là, on s'est rendu compte qu'en fait, il allait avoir un rapport
asked
qui allait
about
être développé sur la
information
sécurité alimentaire. Donc justement, pour nous, c'était le
about
créneau
what
parfait.
would happen on that day.
Ce qu'on s'est
And
dit
we
tous ensemble,
realized
c'est
there
qu'en
would
fait,
be a
on allait
report
essayer de
on
mettre en
food
place une sorte de cheval
security.
de Troie.
So we
à savoir
thought
que la
we
cuisine,
need
ça allait être un
a
prétexte.
Trojan
On allait faire des
horse
smoothies pour les parlementaires
with this
juste
kitchen.
avant qu'ils aillent
In other
voter,
words,
justement.
we
Une fois
had
qu'on
to
leur
talk
offre,
to
enfin, que les
members
jeunes,
of
en l'occurrence, leur
parliament
offrent,
before
des
they could
smoothies,
see that.
des assois sur des
And
chaises de camping,
we
on a
wanted
ramené,
to get
le
them
contraste était
some
assez
smoothies and sit them and
bah,
make
du
them
coup,
to
l'enjeu,
sit
c'était à
on
ce moment-là
camping chairs
que les jeunes puissent leur faire part de leurs
so
conditions,
that the
de
young
leur,
people could
mécontentement vis-à-vis de la question
explain
alimentaire,
their
et potentiellement
condition,
leurs
their
besoins, en espérant que ça
discontent,
puisse avoir
their
un impact sur le
needs,
vote.
hoping that it would
Et
have
après,
an
on a été
influence
invités, du
on
coup, à
their
participer
vote.
au débat qu'il y a eu autour du
And
vote,
then
qui
we were
est- qui a
invited
fini
to
par
take
être
part in the
validé.
debate
C'était
before
une
the
excellente nouvelle
vote.
pour les jeunes.
So it was
Et,
great news
c'était
for
aussi
these young
l'opportunité
people.
pour elles
But
et eux,
it
du coup,
gave
je pense,
an opportunity
d'avoir une forme de
to the young
reconnaissance,
people to be
après tout le travail
recognized, to be
qu'on a pu fournir
acknowledged
ensemble cette
after
année.
all the work they
Et
had
puis ça
done
montre bien qu'en
for
fait,
a
en partant de
whole
pas grand-chose,
year.
à la base, on avait juste des débats
We
entre
started
nous
from very
sur la
little.
bouffe,
We just
en
had
exposé.
discussions
Et
on
finalement,
food
on s'est
initially.
motivé, on s'est dit qu'on allait construire cette cuisine.
We thought
et ça
about
nous a
this
emmenés jusqu'au
kitchen
Parlement
and
où
we
vous avez
ended
pu,
up in
faire
the
entendre votre voix. Et je pense que
Council of
c'était-
Europe and the Parliament, where we
logique et
were
mérité,
heard.
si on prend un peu de-
So I think it was a great
recul.
success.
Mais du coup, il y a ce pan-là, et je parlerai peut-être aussi de...
Now,
Enfin, je pense que ce qui nous a permis beaucoup d'avancer cette année, c'était aussi peut-être de faire un projet pluridisciplinaire. Dans le
we
sens où
also
avant de-
had a
avant, pendant et
project
après,
that covered
on ait construit cette
several
cuisine,
disciplines.
on a organisé plusieurs types
because
d'ateliers avec
we
différents
had different
intervenantes et
workshops
intervenants. Donc, on a
with
eu
different
l'occasion de faire des ateliers de
speakers.
pain avec un boulanger.
So we had
des
workshops
ateliers de
on
cuisine
bread
avec des mamans du quartier
making,
dans lequel on
on
travaillait.
cooking.
On a rencontré des journalistes.
We met
On a
journalists.
rencontré, je me rappelle plus bien,
And I
des
can't
artisans
remember.
du coup avec qui on a appris le travail de la
Different
soudure, le travail du bois pour
craftsmen.
construire la
We
cuisine.
learnt
Et
about
bref, je pense que
wood
c'est
making
tous
or
ces savoir-faire différents et rassemblés
welding.
qui ont permis d'outiller les
And
jeunes
we
et
learned
de-
a lot of
en
things,
fait,
and
quelque
all
part,
the
de
young
rendre
people learned
ambassadeurs de
all
la
that
résilience alimentaire
and
et du coup de
could
faire
become ambassadors of
c'était
food
là-dessus.
resilience. It was great.
Comme Antoine l'a dit, on est parti à Strasbourg.
As Antoine said, we went to Strasbourg.
À nous, à Bagnolet, une première fois.
But some people came to us to Bagnolet for the first time.
Because
Because when we talked about food resilience, they were eager to find more about what we did. And they were just fascinated by our testimonies. And that's when they invited us to Strasbourg, so that we were, as I could say, the experts of our own lives. We were able to answer some questions, in particular on education.
Puis franchement, ça m'a fait bizarre
And
d'être
honestly,
entendu.
I found it quite unusual to be heard.
Je dirais, de haut prestige.
You had these prestigious people listening to us, and we were, you know, from a rundown neighborhood. We're not used to that. It was great. And it was funny to see them on the camping chairs as well, with the smoothies. It was just the right environment for them to listen to us, for them to understand that our lives could be difficult and that they had a responsibility vis-à-vis people like us.
Je suis trop fière et j'ai une
I'm
nouvelle idée
so
de bio-LinkedIn,
proud.
experte de ma propre vie.
I have a new idea about being the expert of my own life.
Non, franchement, c'était vraiment
Honestly,
hyper chouette
it was
et
wonderful
hyper important. En gros,
and very
sans ces
important.
témoignages-là, sans
Because without these testimonies and without these political choices and without the people who are the real actors, well, people would say, well, it's too expensive and after all the situation is not that bad and so forth. So it's very important to give young people the opportunity to take part in discussions and decision-making processes. And therefore, the recommendation on the Council of Europe is that food is a right. And Europe is where a lot of food grows, but a lot of people go hungry. It's not a question of quantity or quality. It's a problem that will become worse with geopolitical tensions and climate change. And therefore, their recommendation is to have a political or legal approach, that is, that in the different states' constitutions, food or eating should be a right, and to have laws and framework laws that would implement that, so that it's not just a pure charity action with the distribution of unwanted food or out-of-date food and things like that. But we have to get the people concerned really heard by the people who make decisions. But let's now move to our questions. Did you want to say a few things or move to, before we move to questions? I don't want you to be too frustrated, of course. Okay. So, are there questions from the floor for our speakers? Please use the microphone for the interpreters to hear you. Thank you very much.
J'ai 3 points. On peut acheter directement le livre qui s'appelle Les 101 mots de la RSE du C3D,
The 100 Words of CSR with Jean-Marc Jancovici, who talks about design, for example, as a word.
Voilà, donc on est un peu dans le sujet, je pense.
And the money is given to
deuxième point, comme disait Agnès, vous pouvez aller voir aussi le site Climadiag de Météo France. La personne qui demandait, website of Météo France. On rentre sa ville ou on rentre sa communauté d'agglomération et on voit tous les indicateurs qui montent.
You see all the indicators
de 2 jours de feux de forêt intenses, on passe
with
à des choses comme ça. Très intéressant, se faire peur, bien
forest fires and so forth.
Et aussi,
is really interesting. And then you have Territoire au
Vous allez voir
futur.
Territoire au futur, vous rentrez votre ville.
For shifters, you enter your town on the website,
autonomie alimentaire de 30%.
and it tells you about food autonomy. For example, in Fontainebleau, in my place, the autonomy is at 30%, but if we reduce the consumption of meat, we would move up to 70%. So you have a very accurate indicator about that. And your testimonies are full of emotions, and that's why it talks to members of parliament and people on TikTok and other social media. I don't know what you should tell them, but you should say, for example, stop eating burgers and buying large cars and taking planes, because, you know, it doesn't help.
Ah, est-ce que vous voulez...
Do you want to answer? In terms of tools, in our association we've produced 2 reports, one about food resilience. They're free of charge on our internet website. And we also have a tool called Crater, which is currently changing its name, so that you can produce a diagnosis of your own region to find out who are the farmers, what is the resilience of the area, and so forth. So it's a very useful tool, and I think it's quite well structured. And it's free of charge. So if you have young people you want to support on this issue, you have all the tools that we developed this year with Make Sense. They're all available in open source, and we will train a number of trainers. And we are working on the follow-up to that program. So if you want more young people to be involved, well, we'll have to find more support, and you can help. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to respond to what you said earlier on about subsidies or grants for people to eat better and change their food behavior, and on food autonomy and regulation. So what do we do for those who advocate food autonomy but cannot do it for legal reasons? You know, individual self-sufficiency, for example. Isn't that something we should explore? Even for urban areas or territories, self-sufficiency should be possible. Yes, indeed. If you can produce your own food, you cannot always produce everything yourself. You cannot produce corn to produce your bread, for example. But it's one of the It's one of the main ideas, because if there's any crisis at any point in time, they will have some food already. The other point is that it makes people aware of farming. It reestablishes a link with nature and the earth, because they see how carrots grow, for example. And if you live in a place that is so dense like Paris, you can't see a lot of nature. But there are a lot of interesting experiences, like growing things on school roofs or roofs, etc. We will never have enough for the whole town or city, but it raises the awareness of people, and planting trees and plants everywhere is good for that. We know it's good for temperatures as well. And the more people grow things, the better it is. You can always have something in your kitchen. It's better than nothing. So anything is good to consider.
Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec les éléments de réponse que tu as apportés. Et en complément, je pourrais rajouter qu'en amont de ce projet-là qu'on a fait avec les jeunes,
before this project with the young people, I wrote a thesis and I looked at a particular neighborhood where we were looking at food autonomy and how to achieve that. And if you have a lot of blocks of flats, it's a problem. Like the neighborhood I was looking at had 3,500 inhabitants. And if you want to produce food for everybody, well, you needed something like 40 hectares of fields to grow things, which was impossible. So we had a discussion about what to do, but there's certainly something to be done in difficult
parce qu'on peut se rendre compte que parfois il y a des points communs sur certaines difficultés, mais que de fait, géographiquement, comme ils ne se croisent pas, ils n'ont pas l'opportunité d'échanger.
In fact, they don't have the opportunity to talk to people of different areas, but we should bring them together.
Je veux bien réagir aussi pour le coup sur la dimension réglementaire.
I would like to talk about the regulatory aspect and the interest of the zero net artificialization law. There are some considerations. We want to limit artificialization of the land, so it is going to be relevant for peri-urban areas because, you know, a lot is being built there. Cities continue to expand. There is urban sprawl. We have not finished our urban transition process in France. And so, you know, there is some work to be done, and the work is being done sometimes here and there by some cities and towns. So it's important to identify the peri-urban farming areas that are the most interesting, the most important, especially from an agri-food standpoint and from a food standpoint. So in order to preserve these areas, so this needs to be taken into account in the urbanization choices. So there is some work being done on that. It's important to take into account the food and farming aspect in the urban planning policies. So clearly, this piece of legislation is welcomed by people who are fighting this fight. Because at the moment, people tended to see peri-urban areas as a real estate reserve that could be used for the future. So clearly, the regulation lever should be activated. I'd like to wrap up now so that we can move on to the awards ceremony. Thank you very much to the four of you. Thank you to all the young people who came here to support Luca, all the ambassadors.
Si vous voulez, là, le format conférence de base, c'est pas trop le délire.
So we don't necessarily, young people do not necessarily like this plenary format. Well, Alisa, you like it, you're fine with it, but I'm not sure about the others.
Et du coup, si vous voulez nous voir en action,
so if you want to see us in action, if you'd like us to visit you with our kitchen, don't hesitate. And before we wrap up, to officially open this kitchen, well, Saturday on Saint-Ouen, I have the exact address.
Banlieue Climat, donc.
Banlieue Climat is going to open. I'm going to give you the address. 14th Street, Alexandre Bachelet. Come to Saint-Ouen, come to see our kitchen, and we'll have a good time.
Merci, bravo à...
Thank you, and well done to all the participants. We have a report on this topic. Short break, just, changing the layout. You can go have a quick drink, and we will start the second part, taking action and creating in order to adapt.
1, 2.
reprendre. Donc, je vous demande de vous rasseoir s'il vous plaît. On est prêt à reprendre. Le décor est déplacé. Et je vais pouvoir ensuite donner la parole à Martine Joraillon.
I'm going to give the floor to Martine Joraillon,
de la Fondation
chairwoman of the Egis Foundation.
Je ne vois pas. Très bien. Et bien on est prêt? Ton micro ne marche pas. Est-ce que ça marche?
Oui.
Très bien. Je te laisse.
J'invite tout le monde à reprendre place.
Please find your seat.
Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Martine Joraillon. I am in charge of sustainable development and engagement at the Egis Foundation and at the Egis Group, and I am the chairwoman of the Egis Foundation. This foundation saw the light of day 18 years ago. Time flies. And since the very beginning, we decided to focus on sustainable development. We then decided to give the foundation a second momentum. It was 3 years ago. We decided to dedicate the work of the foundation to the fight against climate change and to the fair transition, meaning that we decided to focus specifically on disadvantaged or most vulnerable people. As a company, Egis is very much committed in terms of climate and with all of our projects around the world as engineers. But when we look at the urgency of the climate crisis, we felt that it was very important to have an additional action framework on top of what we were doing in our everyday business. And we wanted to take action with NGOs, with schools, with artists, and with young people as well. We wanted to contribute. We wanted to raise awareness, and we wanted to engage people around this issue. Since we wanted to have an impact, we thought, okay, let's focus all of our energy on one specific theme, adaptation, because it is a topic that we felt was a little bit more challenging to address. Besides, during a conversation with young people from the Engagement Institute, we felt that adaptation on an overheating planet was a source of concerns, of anxiety. You know, we talk about eco-anxiety among the youth. Today is the International Day of Mental Health, so that's quite accurate. So there was this whole eco-anxiety, and at the same time, people really wanted to take action, to play their part in the transformations to be there. So adaptation to climate change really is our backbone. And around this backbone, we articulate 3 types of actions. First, support. We support solidarity action, so we support major programs that are led by NGOs and non-profits. Second type of action, awareness raising, be it among our employees or among everyone. So we set up partnerships. For example, there's one with Photoclimat. Hi, Nicolas. And hi, Camille as well. You will know more about them later. Third type of action, an international challenge that we organize every year. So students from around the world contribute. It's a great endeavor. It's a great project. So let's discover with this video how unique this challenge is.
Cure for Climate is an annual challenge that takes place every year, with an initial awareness-raising phase followed by the mentoring phase.
It brings together nearly 500 higher education students from all over 80 countries and all academic specialities. After forming a team, the students choose a local climate risk in their region and propose a solution to adapt and live together in the face of that climate risk.
Educational content, webinars, and boxes experts are shared with the participants. Mentors are trained with the adaptation concepts and develop solutions of maladaptation to better guide students.
3 winners are chosen by jury and Egis employees. The first prize winner was a study trip to France. All laureates receive support, and if they succeed in implementing their project, they will receive an additional boost prize. By building a community with Team Up for Climate, alumni and mentors, the objective is to sustain a collective action on the long term.
The Foundation joined forces with cultural and civic events to initiate debate and raise awareness. Artists will illustrate the student-led adaptation initiatives into a photo exhibition that will take place at Photoclimat in Paris in 2025.
10 association projects have been supported since 2021. 2 course projects have been launched on the theme of adaptation. Among those 2 projects, training and incubation of micro-entrepreneurs in Nubian vault construction to fast up the deployment of resilient buildings in Senegal in association with Food Nubian. Support for a pilot project to train young ambassadors in food resilience in Parisian suburbs, the Photoclimat, City, and Make Sense.
More than 170 Egis volunteers have been involved since 2021. The various events, conferences, and photo competitions have attracted over 3,000 participants. Cumulating 264 days of volunteer work, the foundations spread the urgency to act with a communicative energy.
Merci.
Thank you.
Voilà, place maintenant
Let's now
à la célébration des jeunes qui se sont engagés.
celebrate the young people who took action. You saw it with the Team Up for Climate 2024. 1,600 students from 80 countries took part in this challenge. A sharp increase. We went from 500 participants to 1,600. During the mentoring phase, more than 70 people were trained, were equipped to understand adaptation and to implement that in their projects. Their projects will be presented in English. For most of them, you will see the subtitles on the screen. And some people are with us remotely on Teams. I'm now going to call Martine Joyon to join me. She's a member of the jury. And she's replacing the chairperson, Gilles Vermeau-Desroches, the chairman of the foundation, who couldn't be with us tonight. So, Martine, you were a member of the jury this year as well. Anything you'd like to say about this experience before we give the floor to the first team? Well, first of all, I would like to say a few words about Gilles. Gilles is the chairman who beautifully manages this jury. So Andrine will confirm. So we're thinking about him tonight. Let me say a few words about this challenge. What a challenge it is. Year after year, we have more and more participants. The jury is very refreshing. It's exciting. It is shocking as well, it's energizing. And what I particularly like with this challenge is that we create a bond. We create relationships between young people from all around the world, between employees who become mentors, and between alumni as well from the company, former employees who are now retired, who still like to, spend time, who use their time to encourage these young people. So I find it fantastic. So thank you to all of them. Very well. We're now going to show you the video where you will get to know the LifePod team, Bajo Gil, Vishva Patel, Andriana Pekakovska, Grady Gyorfi, students from Alberta in Canada.
Certainty of not knowing where your next meal will come from or where you'll rest your head at the end of the day. These are the harsh realities faced by over 3,000 Edmontonians every day. Now picture seeking refuge at a homeless shelter only to be turned away. This is a stark reality for nearly 700 Edmontonians. And when extreme weather strikes, whether it's a bone-chilling minus 40 degrees Celsius or a sweltering plus 40 degrees Celsius, or even the suffocating smoke brought in by the wildfires, the situation becomes even more dire. It's undeniable that the world around us is changing, so it's imperative that we take action now and protect those at risk.
But amidst these challenges, there shines a beacon of hope, the LifePod initiative. The LifePod is more than just temporary housing. It's a lifeline powered by green energy, offering safety and security to Edmonton's unhoused population. Imagine a warm and safe haven, shielding from the biting cold of winters or the oppressive heat of summer. Imagine clean air, shielding from the suffocating smoke. But its impact doesn't end there. By day, the LifePods also serve as benches, providing not only shelter, but a community space where friendships can form, conversations can flourish, and hope can bloom.
The LifePod's manufacturing prioritizes sustainability, utilizing recycled materials like steel, plastics, and cork to minimize environmental impact. By choosing LifePods, we're not just providing shelter, we're also making a commitment to a greener, more sustainable future for our city. And it's not just about being eco-friendly, it's about creating opportunities. Manufacturing labor is sourced from community organizations like the Mustard Seed, providing training and pathways to long-term employment for Edmonton's unhoused population. With LifePod, we're not just providing temporary relief, we're building a foundation for lasting change.
The impact of LifePods goes beyond just providing physical shelter. It's about restoring dignity, empowering individuals, and fostering a sense of belonging in our community. It's about saying to every Edmontonian, you matter, you deserve safety, security, and opportunity. But we can't do it alone. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can provide shelter and hope to those who need it most. Join us in supporting the LifePod initiative. Together, let's change the world, one pod at a time.
Well done to the LifePod team. The LifePod team receives the Jury Award, €500 per member of the team. This is the LifePod team. Some people are here with us on Teams. And Martin, maybe you'd like to explain the jury's decision? Well, first of all, well done. Congratulations to all of you. What's important to know is that there was an exceptional participation from Canada at the jury, and especially from the University of Alberta. We had 115 projects, 600 students involved, and the LifePod project, one. And what the jury particularly liked was the social and societal aspect of your project. As you've clearly understood, the objective was not only to provide a shelter to homeless people, but also to provide them with a framework, a place where they can reconnect with society. This is something that tug on the heartstring for the jury, so we decided to open a new category that did not exist in the regulation, in the rules and regulation. Well, you know, the heart spoke, and so we decided to have the Coup de Cœur Award. Well done.
Bravo.
Congratulations to the Lifepod team. I'm looking for my notes for the names of the participants of the second team. I'm going to ask Sandrine Maizano to join me on stage. She's the CSR expert. She's a scientific advisor for the La Main à la Pâte Foundation. She's also a member of the jury. We are going to talk about the We Care team from Brazil, made up of Andrea Oliveira Macedo, Daniel Carvalho Silva, Bruna Marcela Loyola Romano, Maria Luisa Loyola Isidoro, who are students studying civil engineering at the Federal University of Minas Gerais. Next slide, just to see their faces. 4 students from Brazil, and we're going to discover their project.
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. We are from the Recap team. Our project focuses on the revitalization of the stream in the Jardim Felicidade community over a 2-year period. The stream in question, called Tamboril, is located in Jardim Felicidade neighborhood in Belo Horizonte, Brazil.
So, our proposal for climate change adaptations involves the active engagement of the community itself in the transformations they wish to see in their surroundings. We aim to raise awareness and address issues related to floods and diseases resulting from the stream pollution. The local community has been suffering for decades from the destruction of their homes caused by floods and health problems caused by the spread of disease, primarily due to climate changes. Both issues are caused by the amount of trash in the streams and the obstruction of water flows.
To tackle these problems sustainably, we propose semi-annual cycles of collaborative work with the community, which will include cleaning the stream, organizing waste collection efforts, raising awareness about diseases, and promoting sustainable landscaping initiatives. To engage the community to participate in awareness workshops and the cleaning of the stream, we will offer benefits to the participating members through a system called Blue Credits. This will be a system for earning and exchanging credits for food baskets and vouchers that can be used in supermarkets and pharmacies.
By fostering community engagement and revitalizing the creek, we will see significant improvement in water quality, increased public awareness, and easier access to essential resources. This collective effort will also help eliminate unpleasant odors and pollution from the creek. It will also reduce the spread of disease and the risk of flooding. The WeCare team believes that this is the best way to cultivate a culture of environmental conservation within the community, establishing a virtuous cycle of sustainable and collective well-being.
So this is the result of our project. We appreciate the opportunity and thank everyone for your attention.
Bravo. Bravo à l'équipe WeCare.
Well done to the WeCare team. This team is awarded the Egis Employee Award. We asked the Egis employee to tell us what their favorite project was, the most impactful, so they received 107 votes out of 199. François Apton, they receive 150 euros per member of the team, so well done. Well done to all of them. 500 euros per member. I'm a member of the jury, so this is very important for me to be here tonight. This is a symbolic event. You know, we highlight the projects that are awarded prizes, and this is the Egis Employee Award, and I believe that this award, well, the jury did not vote, the Egis employees voted, and this is a specific, a unique award. As a former CEO, you know, I always find that it's important for employees to embrace a project. This is when we have the most impact. This is very important in a group such as Egis. And it's important to highlight the fact that there were 107 voters out of 116, actually. It is amazing, fantastic to see that out of 116 people, 107 chose that project. So congratulations to you. This is fantastic to share this moment with you. It's fantastic to see you sharing that with us too. The community aspect was important, and you know, in the projects that we reviewed, as Martin said, you know, there was a lot happening. It's very important to mix the environmental considerations and the societal environmental. We can't imagine the environmental transition without thinking about fairness. And the young people who worked on those projects are fully aware of that. And it was clearly expressed for this project with this award. Thank you very much, Amandine. Well done to all of them. Well done. Moving on to the next project, Growing Forward, presented by Philippe Essou, Héloïse Edon, Karine Quedom, Antevelde Gbagidi, Manarat Maliki from the National School of Administration, was studying in Benin. We're going to watch their video, which is in French this time.
Hello, c'est l'équipe Growing Forward. Je reprends au nom de Manarat Maliki, Karine Quedom, Antevelde Gbagidi, Philippe Essou, Héloïse Edon. Ndali, une ville carrefour du nord du Bénin, comportant environ 113 104 habitants et dont 70% vivent de l'agriculture, est confrontée à une suite d'intensification de sécheresse liée au changement climatique. Une sécheresse qui passe progressivement de 4 mois à 8 mois. Ce qui réduit considérablement la disponibilité en eau pour les cultures, entraînant une diminution des rendements agricoles, une menace pour la sécurité alimentaire. Ceci pousse alors les agriculteurs à utiliser de manière excessive des intrants chimiques qui accentuent l'inefficacité des sols et sont la base de plusieurs maladies.
Nous proposons la terre prêta comme solution. Ceci consiste à valoriser les déchets agricoles pour produire du compost et de biochar dont le mélange terre prêta servira d'amendement pour le sol. Son pouvoir d'action peut être remarqué avec une petite quantité appliquée.
Cette solution que nous proposons permettra la régénération des sols, l'amélioration de la productivité agricole à travers son pouvoir de rétention d'eau et de nutriments, en stimulant la biodiversité et en offrant une solution viable pour une gestion à long terme des terres agricoles. De plus, le biochar permet la séquestration du carbone dans le sol de 10 à 90%, réduisant ainsi le réchauffement climatique.
Pour exécuter ce projet, nous aurons à faire la sensibilisation et l'information. Ensuite, la mise en place du site de production de la terre prêta, la formation des agriculteurs et enfin le suivi et l'évaluation.
Nous proposons une solution durable et visionnaire car la finalité est de permettre à la terre avec le temps de se reprendre en main. Nous croyons en notre solution et en sa faisabilité, en ce sens où il répond à la thématique d'adaptation et permet à la population de faire face aux risques des changements climatiques. Au-delà de ça, notre solution est smart, simple, mesurable,
atteignable
et réalisable dans le temps. Merci.
Vous m'entendez? Oui, bravo. On voit une belle énergie.
Well done, great energy. Second prize.
Oui, peut-être
A few words.
Ce qui a été, je crois, marquant pour cette équipe, donc dont le projet a vraiment marqué
This was a great project. Different continent. We went to Canada, we went to Brazil, Benin now. All continents are represented. So what we particularly liked was that this team offered a lot of documents, lots of effort, and we liked the gender or the diversity. It's important to stress that. The diversity was important. We like that. So I do not intervene in the mentoring phase, but I saw that the team made a lot of progress over time. I know we talk about supporting them, and we see that this support that we provide the students with is very important. So well done, congratulations to all of you, and once again we see that this project combined social and environmental aspects, which is essential in the way we recognize the projects. May I add a few things, a few words before we move on to the last team? A few things. First of all, I would like to congratulate the team from the Egis Foundation. I've always been a member of the jury. I see more and more projects. It's more organizations, more than 60 countries. We know that Charlotte works a lot, so I would like to give them a round of applause. It's very important. They are promoting young people. It's important to stress that. What I find fantastic with this challenge is that it's called Team Up, which means that it promotes cooperation. And we know that in order to address all the issues, we need to work together. This is great because it really developed this mindset. We talked about 4 continents, more and more women among the members, and they have so much energy. Martin, you said it. At the end of the day, we're exhausted because we see a lot of people, remotely when they are far away. We need to be focused. We see them coming and going, but it's so refreshing. And this is very important. It's important to see that young people are really pushing us forward. They are the future. We are responsible for the future, but we know that young people are going to be the future. So it is a day full of optimism every time with the jury. So you can count on me next year. Thank you very much, Sandrine. We're now going to ask the Wetlands for Nepal team to join us. They are here with us tonight.
Donc, allez-y, l'équipe.
Go ahead.
Please come. You can leave it now. It's okay. Oh, maybe better to take it. Not too late. So you can have the translation, and now you don't have to speak English. Okay?
Right, so I'm going to speak in French so that you can hear me. Please join me. Come with me. Come with me. Yes, you can use your headphones. Make sure you use your headphones. Some people do not have their headphones though.
Pardon. Oui, pour l'instant c'est bon. Merci. How many do you want? 1, 2, 3. Et puis on va les écouter.
We're going to listen to your project.
Hello.
Bonsoir. We are Wetlands for Nepal, and this is our pitch. Let me introduce you to Anusha. She's a 6-year-old child who has lost 7 days of her classes. It is because her school bus couldn't get to her home on time because of urban flooding. And right after that, she got sick with diarrhea because of water contamination. This is the story of countless individuals like Anusha throughout Kathmandu Valley, where we all live. And because of climate change and rapid urbanization, this threat is even more pervasive. That is why we, Wetlands for Nepal, have decided to act.
urban flooding is becoming a more regular occurrence in the cities of Nepal, especially in Kathmandu Valley and in a highly urbanized landscape where our project area is located. And urban flooding leads to a number of problems, including inundation of roads and disruption of traffic during the flood, especially in the monsoon season. And flooding is one of the natural hazards, and natural climate-related hazards are supposed to account for around 80% of property losses due to natural disasters. But then the damages due to urban flooding, which is becoming more of an occurrence, is being underestimated and overlooked. But urban flooding is a climate crisis because it is projected that the monsoon will intensify by 3-folds due to climate change in the near future, thereby intensifying urban flood.
Our idea is to construct rain garden that collects and stores rainwater. For urban communities of Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, which needs flood-free localities, our rain gardens can help to mitigate urban floods and helps to create green, vibrant space in concretized urban areas.
Our rain gardens are projected to hold 30,800 cubic meter of water, which is equivalent to 12.3 times Olympic swimming pool. It consists of upper vegetative layer and lower percolation pit, which is constructed of porous materials such as sand and soil. This simple solution reduces flood water level. It also filters the stormwater with the help of soil, plant and microbes. It also provides space for urban greenery and promotes the social cohesion, because with this individual solution, it also promotes the community well-being.
Working together with governmental and non-governmental bodies, these rain gardens will be designed for specific locations based on their local conditions. Their effectiveness in controlling floods will be monitored before scaling them up into a larger scale. And with all of that, the results will be monitored and shared with the public as well as with our partners. Together, we can create more flood-resilient communities, one rain garden at a time. We seek your support in our bid to bolster a more urban flood-resilient Kathmandu, as well as Nepal and maybe the world. So, merci.
Bravo. Bravo.
Well done. Well done and congratulations.
Que je n'avais pas présenté, mais donc,
I did not introduce them, but here are their names.
Shreska,
Anurai,
Prakash Pradhan,
Vivek Shreska.
Rabina,
They're all the names.
Shriya Manandar. Bravo.
Well done to all of you.
Bravo. Et donc, on peut leur remettre
So we can officially give them the first prize.
2 000 euros. Par,
1,000 euro per member of the team.
Quelques mots sur l'équipe.
A few words about the team, Martin, and the project. Well, what we particularly liked was how determined you were. You were really determined. You had strong beliefs. You were motivated. This was very, very, very nice. And what we particularly liked as well was your capacity to leverage all of your skills, all of your expertise. You are very complementary. And there was also the quality of your submission. It was a robust submission, and we believed in it right away. We knew immediately that this project was going to see the light of day. It was an intuition, and I'm sure that you are going to actually do it, because I think that you did not give up at all, and you are continuing working on your project. So really, I want this project to see the light of day. It deserves it, so well done. Congratulations to all of you.
Non, si c'est bon. Bravo donc à l'équipe.
Well done to
On
the
va
team.
profiter d'un petit temps de questions.
We are going to have a Q&A session. We have some teams online as well. We have a few questions to ask the teams. And we can also ask questions to Wetland for Nepal.
La première question.
The first question from Martin. Question number one for the LifePod team is this one, so well done once again. You took part in this challenge. What did it bring you from a personal or professional standpoint? What did you take away from this challenge? Who would like to answer?
LifePod.
Anyone from LifePod? We do not have the sound. Maybe you're on mute.
Il semble qu'on n'a pas le son de la vision.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, it definitely helps a lot with getting a more proper understanding of how to do entrepreneurship-related things as part of studies in university. And it was also just a good lesson in understanding how to go about assisting people with all sorts of problems, but especially with dealing with the climate crisis and the effects of it. Being able to actually help in a tangible way was very interesting.
Can you stop, please, for the translation? Thank you.
Quick break for the interpretation.
En fait, ça nous a donné une compréhension. On a cherché à aider les gens pour résister, pour s'adapter au changement climatique. Et en faisant tout ça, on a mieux compris ce que ça signifiait d'être dans l'entrepreneuriat, de travailler avec d'autres, d'établir tous ces projets. En fait, on a mieux compris ce qui se passait.
Anything you'd like to add?
Go ahead.
All good?
We're good.
Bien, donc on a notre première réponse avec the LifePod.
Right, that was the first answer from LifePod. I'm going to ask a question now to the WeCare team.
Donc, comment est-ce que vous avez eu l'idée de lancer ce projet?
When and how did you have the idea to launch this project?
Qu'est-ce qui vous a influencé?
What were your influences? How did you come up with this approach?
I can answer. You are hearing me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So we are thinking about like a lot of ideas, but I think what made us choose like the project of Blue Credits was like the impact of both social and environmental landscapes. So instead of promoting a project that would like help the environment and then will be beneficial to the community, through the Blue Credits we could have like two sources of change integrated in one project. So that we could change the environment, help the environment, and through the giving access to food and healthcare expenses, we could help in the social aspect too. So this was like our main influence, and on top of that, our approach was very focused in bringing the community in the project to be something that will have like a legacy that will be in long term. So it's not only about like giving opportunity to access to food or just cleaning the stream at one time. It's about like raising awareness, making them see like how it's helping them through like them participating in the community activities, and then we can see a real change for like not only now but for the future.
Alors on a eu des tas d'idées et en fait ce qui nous a surtout intéressé dans ce qu'on a retenu comme idée, c'est qu'on a vu qu'il y avait deux sources de changement dans notre projet. C'est-à-dire que d'une part on avait un impact sur l'environnement et également sur les dépenses de santé et d'alimentation. C'est-à-dire qu'il y avait des aspects sociaux et des aspects environnementaux. Il y avait les deux dans ce projet. C'est ça qui nous a intéressés. Et puis surtout, c'est un projet qui peut s'inscrire dans la durée. Et c'est ça qui nous intéressait. C'est-à-dire que c'était pas, on ne donnait pas juste l'opportunité une fois d'avoir peut-être un petit peu de soins de santé ou d'alimentation, mais c'était beaucoup plus inscrit dans la durée. C'était ça qui était fondamental.
Et la troisième
Thank
question,
you.
peut-être pour...
Third question. Now a question for growing forward. You are in the implementation phase. What are the challenges that you need to overcome now? And how do you go about it?
Je vois Héloïse. Et donc, est-ce que... Héloïse, tu peux répondre
Héloïse,
à la
can you
question
answer this question?
Growing forward?
For growing forward?
Oui.
Super.
Oui, vous pouvez répondre à la question, s'il vous plaît?
Yes, can you repeat the question, please? You are in the implementation phase. We imagine that you are faced with challenges and obstacles. How do you overcome them? How do you get prepared?
Ok. Alors, comme premier challenge déjà,
Well,
il y avait
the first challenge
la communauté qui a eu un peu au début du mal à accepter le
is that
projet.
in the beginning
À
the
cause des
community
cultures,
struggled
de la
to accept this
culture,
project because of the
parce que
culture.
c'est une culture plutôt des gens qui ont l'esprit fermé.
Well,
Donc,
people
on a un peu
are
eu du mal à
close-minded,
intégrer le
so it was
projet.
difficult to,
Mais lorsqu'ils
you know,
ont compris
suggest this
que
project.
c'était pour
Once they've
leur
understood
bien,
that it was for their own good,
vraiment accepter le
they
projet.
really embraced the project. Apart from that,
Comme défi, je pourrais souligner
in terms
les
of challenges, I could talk about
étant des étudiants,
the fact that
il
we are
fallait
students,
vraiment
so we
faire
had
beaucoup
many
de
different
sacrifices.
concerns. We had to do a lot of sacrifices, make a lot of sacrifices in order to
projet.
be able to meet and work on the project. So that's another challenge that we had. But we were able to overcome this challenge and the others, and we are where we are today. Thank you.
Merci. Et dernière question.
One last question. Yes, a question for the big winners. I'm very curious, and so I would like to know what are the next steps for the rollout of your project?
J'avoue que j'ai pas bien entendu.
Wetlands for Nepal, la question.
Don't worry, it was not a question for you, Eloise. It's for Wetlands for Nepal.
Thank you so much for the question. Our team is already planning on implementing the project activities, and right now we are in the final stages of the planning, and we have identified certain plots of land, coordinating with the government bodies, with some schools where we could implement this project, and we are trying to implement it in a public and a private space, so that both these stakeholders can know that these solutions can be flexible, can be implemented in different ways, and eventually we would want these sites to be an educational site, and we are also planning some art murals so that people don't have to be a technical expert to understand it. We want to simplify it to the public. So yeah, these are yes.
Alors, merci beaucoup pour votre question. Nous en sommes vraiment à la phase de mise en œuvre du projet. Nous en sommes vraiment aux toutes dernières étapes. Et ce que nous faisons actuellement, c'est de chercher des parcelles de terrain.
We are now looking for plots of land, schools, etc., to try and find public and private spaces. But what we want to show is that we have flexible solutions. Our solutions will be implemented easily. We also try to simplify things as much as possible. We try to, have an educational approach as well. Well done.
Bravo, encore.
Well done once again.
S'il y a une dernière question du public.
If there is a last question from the audience, we can take it. Otherwise, we are going to move on to the last session. All good? All right. Then thank you very much, Baraicha.
Pour cette session, encore
well done.
Félicitations
Congratulations.
aux étudiants pour leur projet. Je vais
I'm now going to ask Nicolas Henry and Camille Gharbi to join me on stage for the last session. Stay put.
La mise en valeur, la mise en lumière.
Are now going to shed some light on our partnership, the partnership with Photoclimat.
partie finale de cet événement.
This is the last session of this event, taking action and creating. We have two artists with us. So Nicolas, can you explain or can you tell us more what Photoclimat is?
Thank you very much for having us here. Photoclimat is the social and environmental photo biennial. Some years ago, I'd been contacted by Emmaus to provide an exhibition on their 70 years, and I discovered the social problems and the environmental concerns. And Irène Colonna suggested an exhibition in Le Panthéon on literacy, and then the Le Marchand Foundation also contacted me for going round France. And with the Mairie de Paris and others, we decided to set up a festival. We have about 5 million visitors now during a month between mid-September and mid-October. And we have different stages that are environmentally friendly with various associations like architects and so forth. And these are the images you can see here. This goes to the Palais Royal. It's a nice neighborhood in Paris. We have various associations or organizations with you. And on the Seine River, we have a number of things on the water cycle, biodiversity, and so forth. We have the Climate Academy here with a number of cultural events and permanent programs. And we try to bring young people to discover what they could do with these non-profit organizations. And when the Egis Foundation contacted me, it made sense. It was perfectly in line with what we were doing. We had a number of things with various French bodies. We have about 30 artists, 40 NGOs and exhibitions in the whole of France. And the exhibitions are going round, and we're working with universities, with various cities, and we are targeting a number of audiences that don't have the typical exposure to our photographs. But you were also involved in the jury last year for the students' project. So you looked at some projects of students from last year. Could you explain your approach? And I'm a photographer to start with, and Egis explain the awards and the prize that was explained tonight. And they said, you should be a member of the jury. And I said, but I have no expertise in that field. And when you're a member of the jury, you realize that it is a global project, that things are happening everywhere in the world. And every year I'll go all over France to see the NGOs there. But this year I spent 6 months traveling around the world to meet NGOs. And I went to see 2 projects. Future Salt, you see one of the actors here. I met them in Hanoi, and I could take some pictures. And these were very urban girls, if I could say that. You have a software program that links all the beacons in the salt marshes in the Mekong Delta. And the farmers know when to bring in water and when to remove it or stop it from going in. So it's quite technological. But these young girls came from the photograph, and they were really nicely dressed. This is one of the winners of last year. This one is in the house of her family. You had an incredible landscape. So we took a picture of her at the top of the building, and there was another one. I tried to show the Mekong River, biodiversity, the danger represented by salt and the salt marshes, and this is the fourth one. This was in my pictures, I create different universes that are completely imaginary universes, sorry. And in the exhibition, you have these pictures that are a bit crazy. I'm sure people stop at that. And then it gives you the opportunity to explain the project and their creativity. And the other topic, or the other project, I was in the Ecuador, in Guayaquil. The students welcomed me in a university, and they lived in various blocks of flats in town, but they were interested in the environment. And this is the first image of one student looking at the city and wondering about how to safeguard the environment or protect the environment. Then we went for a walk. There were 3 students, 2 young ladies, and they showed me a park that they loved, and they said, you should take a picture of us in that particular park. And they were really nicely dressed. And the whole issue was about protecting the mangroves. And you see the image with their reflection on the water. And this is the last image, a mangrove with a young girl and extraordinary trees. I wanted to show the beauty of nature and bring a message or convey a message about the future with a young girl. Thank you.
Et donc, on découvre en avant-première.
So this is a first. In a year from now, at the time of the biennial, these pictures will be included in the exhibition. But then we have also Camille Gharbi, a photographer who's in residence, and the project was absolutely superb. It was on Place de la Bastille, and we asked her to spend the rest of her time for the Egis Foundation. Camille, I'll give you the floor for your work. So Camille Gharbi. First of all, thank you the Aegis Foundation and Photoclimat as well. I was honored to be involved last year with a project during my residence with a women's association from India. And we produced a number of portraits on the issue of dignity. These are Malgrinis that are very committed women, and I try to pay tribute to these women. It's all about our colonial heritage, which in France is a difficult issue that should be further discussed. So these are pictures on portraits. And when Nicolas asked me to be involved in the next edition of Photoclimat, with the project Team Up for Climate, I was just fascinated and passionate about that, because I discovered all the projects of young students and young adults throughout the world who are tackling these frightening and intimidating issues, especially if you're not an expert like an engineer. You feel powerless, you are intimidated, but seeing all these initiatives was just fascinating. And it was a real boost to have a challenge that was to try to represent the projects without necessarily going there. I thought it was a big artistic and intellectual challenge. I work a lot on social problems, and in all my projects, I ask the question about how can we all live together in a society, in an inclusive society. And I think that all these young people and their initiatives are trying to answer that question. They're trying to take up the challenges of climate change, looking at nature, solidarity, collective intelligence. So the different solutions or initiatives are not all based on technology. Some have other aspects like solidarity, living together, relationships between people, and that was really striking and moving for me. Now, I haven't started taking my pictures, but my idea is really to convey all that. I will probably have very dreamlike images, asking people on the streets to talk about the project and do things.
Merci.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to seeing the exhibition. I think we can conclude our evening with these beautiful images. Thank you for staying until the end and exchanging all together. But before you go for a drink, I'd like to call the people you haven't seen, like Karine, Bélise, and Amandine, and so forth, and Eva.
Et puis on va remercier les
And we can also
les interprètes
thank the interpreters and the technical team, because they've done a wonderful teamwork, and I want big, big, big applause for them.
Merci.
Big round of applause. And now
Allez,
we can go for a drink.
Merci.
Thank you.
C'est un peu barré. Quelle rencontre.
Mm-hmm.